Ramaswamies are making waves in the United States of America, be it Republicans or now we're talking about a Democrat. Ashwin Ramaswamy, a Gen Z candidate, one of the youngest, so to say, 24-year-old, who is fighting the Senate elections from the state of Georgia, uh, and now is looking to becoming a face for the Democrats as well. Ashwin, thank you so much for joining us here on India Today. Indeed, a pleasure. How does it feel being one of the youngest? And should you win, you'd be the first Gen Z senator.
Thanks for having me on. It feels very exciting. I know that it's something which it's not, I would be the first person to do this. So I feel like I'm able to inspire a lot of folks to give back to their community in this way and show people a new way in which things are possible.
What made you think that you should be fighting the elections at the age of 24?
A few things. My background is in computer science. I used to do software engineering. I was over at Stanford, and I soon realized that we need talented people to be in the government. And I started working in the federal government on election security and cybersecurity from 2020 to 2023. And what I saw was that if you don't have the right kinds of politicians to back up the experts and folks working in government, our work can be undermined, as we saw it happen in the 2020 elections. So all of this made me want to do more law and policy work, ended up going to law school. And I've always wanted to give back to my own hometown in Georgia. The last thing which made me decide to contest this race was seeing that the incumbent state senator got indicted along with former President Trump for trying to overturn the election. So there's two things. One is I wanted to make sure we had a voice of integrity, someone who can bring the expertise and focus on the issues that matter. And second is by being someone from the community and someone so young, I hope that we can really work on these issues in a new way and bring more hope to focusing on issues like healthcare, education, and public safety as well.
Well, Ashwin, I was just going to come to that. Should you win, you will be defeating a very important or stronghold of the Republicans, whether it's Sean Still or not. But yes, it was Sean Still, and you would be replacing him. What are your chances? You've been speaking to a lot of people, a lot of experts are writing on the state of Georgia and the Senate elections there. How do your chances really look? And how confident are you about a win?
We have pretty good chances. This is actually a purple district. It's one of Democrats' top targets to flip in terms of state Senate for 2024. In 2020, the district was about half and half in terms of Biden versus Trump. So there's a lot of people here who are independent, moderate, who feel like we don't want the polarization of both sides and we want to just work on issues that matter to us. So I think we have a pretty good chance here. I think a lot of it depends on how much attention, how much money we can raise, and how much we can really do that outreach to both sides in terms of telling them that here's a vision we have for the future.
What are the challenges that you see for yourself, not just in these elections, but also in the future?
A few challenges. So I'm a member of Gen Z, which means that I, born from 1997, I believe, to 2012 is the Gen Z range. And I think what we've been seeing is that there's so many challenges we see in the world around things like climate change, around even the idea that it's harder to own a house now and buy a house, it's harder to keep a job. There's all these issues that even no matter how hard you work, it seems like the system's built such that it really favors the people who are older and wealthier. So those are the challenges that we'll have to face growing up, in a sense that, if I start a family, when I'm coming and living here in Georgia, I want to make sure that I have those opportunities and everyone else does as well. And I think the biggest challenge is that people my generation don't yet have a voice in the political system. As you mentioned, I would be the first Gen Z state senator in Georgia. A lot of the folks who are already there don't understand the importance of some of these issues, such as healthcare, getting a house. We don't have enough voices there. So my hope is by being an additional voice here, I can make sure I bring those challenges and surface them so that we can address them now.
Right. Even as lawmakers, we know that there are a lot of lawmakers, a lot of Indians who've done well for themselves, Indian Americans, Indian origin Americans who've done well for themselves. But do you think America is really ready for Indian Americans, for the brown race, so to say, to be a part of this entire system, the electoral system? Or is it more difficult being an Indian American?
I would say, I mean, it's always difficult, but I would just note that America has had Indian Americans since at least the 1700s. There's a long history of people from India coming here and being and being part of this country. And there's a long history of that, and we should not forget the influence that Indian Americans have had on American thought, or whether it's, for example, folks like Emerson and Thoreau reading the Bhagavad Gita, Vivekananda coming in the 1800s here, or even in the 1700s, I believe that there was a lady named Mary Emmons who ended up having children with Aaron Burr, one of our founding fathers. And we've had so many examples of that. And I think it's a matter of educating folks about our own history and showing that America has always been multicultural in this way. So I think what I'm doing here is just a continuation of that long history we have had of being inspired and welcoming folks from around the
We'll
world.
talk about India, America, but before that, your own country, the United States of America, looks quite polarized. Should Trump win the primaries, how do you see the entire election itself pan out between Trump and Biden? There is a lot of criticism that Biden has received in the recent past, and you being a Democratic candidate, as also having Vivek Ramaswamy on the other side batting for Trump. So, how do you see this entire polarized world where we see two Ramaswamis, both in the polar opposite sides?
I would say voters ultimately look at the incumbent and they see how has the incumbent been doing, and based on that, they'll decide who they want to vote for. And if you compare the difference between now and 2020, I think it's very different. If you look at 2020, we had an incumbent, President Trump, who did a lot of problems in terms of dealing with the COVID pandemic, a lot of issues where he would make things up about election security. All that rhetoric on the campaign trail really hurt him. It's what caused Biden to win. And I think now, if you compare that to what's happened today, sure, there's always criticisms of everyone in terms of what they could have done and couldn't have done, but I don't think it's at all comparable to what President Trump was in 2020. So I believe that voters will just see the records and the records will speak for themselves.
Well, Ashwin, you're a youth candidate. There are a lot of youth voters that you'd be looking at tapping. What's the strategy over here? Is there a strategy in how you're going about things? Are you looking at tapping into the youth voters, or is it more broad based? Explain to us your strategy to win this election.
First of all, our most important strategy, I'd say, is making sure that Democrats turn out. So people who already are in line with these values should know that, hey, there's someone named Ashwin Ramaswamy down ballot, and we should vote for them. Because a lot of people will just vote for the president, but then they'll forget to vote down ballot. So that's the most important part to start with. And then additional to that, we're going to do lots of outreach to young folks. Given my age, it's much easier to relate to people who are in high school, for example, or even teachers as well, because they know that I came from that system. There's 6 high schools in our district, and we plan to reach out to as many of those students as possible, and not only ask them to vote if they can, but also to tell their families and their friends about the campaign. And we hope this will not only help us get more votes, but also give them a bigger voice in the policymaking process.
Right. Why the Senate route? Why not the Congress?
I would say it's it takes a lot more resources in order to run for national office in Congress. So it's something, it's much harder to start that kind of route. I'd also say that a lot of things happen at the state level, which often people don't realize. People often focus on the federal, on the US Congress level, and they don't realize that the state government controls things like education budgets, transportation, a lot of healthcare as well. And we need talented people at the state level as well. That's actually why I left the federal government and decided to do more state work. I think we need to start at that level in order to make any kinds of larger change.
What about support from your family, from your parents, siblings, cousins, the larger family, support from India, your family in India?
My family is very supportive. My parents are very proud and have supported me, and they're one of the best volunteers on the campaign. I have a twin brother, and he's also been very supportive as well. And of course, family elsewhere has also seen the news, has been sharing things as well. But I would say it's been incredible the amount of support I've gotten from the community as well. It's like everyone is in a way part of my family because I've grown up here and people know that I share the values which they share as well.
In the recent past, Ashwin, finally, before I let you go, with the way India-US relations have really grown, Indian Americans have been quite upbeat about the relationship and how Indians now are viewed in America. Has a lot of things changed for Indian Americans in the United States of America with the Modi administration here in New Delhi?
I would say that as you mentioned, the stature of Indian Americans has slowly been increasing. I think one thing to keep in mind is as Indian Americans here have gotten more resources, have become wealthier, as you might see with a lot of tech companies are led by Indian CEOs, for example. We need to make sure that we're not leaving the rest of our communities behind. One area where I see there's still a lack of Indian American representation is in public service at the state and local levels. I think in order to be fully integrated in our communities, we need to work at the state and local levels and beyond just working in business as well.
Okay, and finally, before I let you go, we are looking at a lot of cooperation between India and the United States of America. But in terms of support coming in from Indian lawmakers such as Ro Khanna, Raja Krishnamurthy, so on and so forth, what's the kind of support that is trickling in for you, Ashwin? And secondly, social media is a huge, huge space for a young person like you. Are you going to use that well and use the social media cloud of India as well? Because a lot of people might learn about you and then maybe start talking about you and create that buzz, not from the US, but from India as well.
I would say a lot of people are talking about us, and our goal is how do we share this story, across the world, because I think it's an inspiring one that everyone can learn from, and it's also a way in which people in India know folks in the US whom we should talk with. There's so many ties that we really want to make sure we benefit from that as well. And we have been using social media as well. We have Instagram, Twitter. Our handles are Ashwin for Georgia and Ashwin for GA. That's how to spell it. And yes, our plan is to do that to make sure that we reach as wide an audience as possible. One thing to note is, oh, go ahead, sir.
Go ahead.
One thing to note is that social media is important, but the most important thing is reaching your own voters. So that's our biggest priority. And we want to make sure that we are spending time online, but using that energy to make sure that we can reach the people in our district.
On that note, Ashwin Ramaswamy, wishing you the best for the elections in Georgia, but also for the Democrats in the United States of America. Stay well, goodbye, and take care.